Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. You're somewhere around my 350th, this sort of thing. And back in the early days when I first started presenting to business groups, I used to hand out my own evaluation sheets. And I was speaking in Chicago that turned out to be a CEO organization that had been together for 37 straight years. And there was one guy in the room who was asking me way too many micro-oriented questions. And after it was about an eighth in a row, I realized this guy could actually hijack the entire presentation. So I said to him, I timed him out, and I said, I want to respectfully decline from answering your question. I slipped him my cell phone number. I said, how about you and I handle this offline? Is that okay? And he said, yeah. Then when they handed in their evaluation sheets, you could score me on a 1 to 5, 5 being the best. He's the only person in the room that didn't give me a 5. He gave me a 3. He wrote on his piece of paper, I gave you a 3 because you didn't answer my question. And literally the guy sitting next to him wrote, I gave you a 5 because you didn't answer his question. And it drew an arrow on a piece of paper, right? So I'm figuring like, man, what do you do with that as a presenter, right? So I figured, okay, maybe there's some rules of engagement that we could have in order to make sure everybody here walks away with value. Fair? All right, so the first one is like, let's not get too micro-oriented, especially if we don't have a lot of time and I have a lot of information to give you in a short period of time. It's only 2 million slides. All right, okay. So the deal is, so the second one is that we're all suffering from an electronic version of ADD. There's something in your pocket right now. There's someone outside this room metaphorically trying to tap you on the shoulder right now, potentially, about something that appears to be urgent. And the truth is, dirty secret is, that probably is urgent. And programs like this are not urgent. The truth is, these are important. So what I believe my role is, and the role of the organization, is to pull your noses off the grindstone just long enough so you can look over the horizon. So all we want to do is keep the tyranny of the urgent outside the room. The reason why I'm here is because I talked 2 CEOs out of suicide in the financial crisis. I never want to have those conversations ever again. So picture, there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of people outside this room counting on us making excellent decisions inside this room. That's why I'm here. So what I want to do is keep the tyranny of the urgent outside the room. We're going to make sure that you're motivated to reevaluate your strategic plan, your marketing plan, and your investment plan. Now, it might be naive on my part, but I believe if I can motivate you, get you to look over the horizon more accurately, in other words, tell the future more accurately, well, that will improve your strategic planning, your marketing planning, your investment planning. Sound fair? All right, so the third thing that I have to say or warn you about rules of engagement is one that kind of disturbs me. The president of the University of Chicago had to pen an open letter to incoming freshmen 2 years ago and had to do it again this year. And what it was is that he said, we do not respect safe spaces. Are you familiar with this term? That's where the students were demanding that the professors are not allowed to bring up any subject that might potentially offend them. That's anti-learning, me no likey, right? So it can also be code for I'm easily offended, so I have no sense of humor, me no likey either, right? So the way I look at it is we're born with 2 funny bones and 1 ability to be offended. So how about we use them proportionally? Is that fair? Okay, cool, sounds good. All right, so with that, thank you. All right, so I'd like you to open up your handouts. I'm going to walk you through the slides. Your handouts are pretty close to it. So I was presenting in Milwaukee, and the chair of that organization asked an interesting question. He said, what's the true role of the CEO/business leader? What's the true role? And I went around the room a couple of times, and there was one guy who stood up, guy who just sold his company in Milwaukee, stood up, and he was kind of like one of those big teddy bear, patriarch-style CEOs. And there's something I've learned after doing 300 of these. If a CEO stands up and gets that demonstrative, you're probably just better off letting him talk. So I said, okay, what do you got? And he said, well, I was at a recent family barbecue, kind of big in Milwaukee. I don't think it's so big in California, certainly not in New York where I'm from. You know, people like asking your employees to commute to something extra, they're not happy about that. But in Milwaukee, that's a thing. So he said, I'm at the recent family barbecue, and a new hire walks over, and he goes, so what do you do? Well, that can mean one of 2 things. Either the new hire is too stupid to know who the CEO is, or more likely the CEO is not part of that hiring process. So let's just pretend it's the latter. Sounds more new agey, leadership-y kind of thing, right? And he goes, what do you mean, what do I do? And the guy turns around and starts pointing at people at the barbecue, rattling off their job descriptions and their titles. Kind of impressive. And the CEO paused for a moment, looking at the guy, goes, oh, I get it. He goes, I make sure you have a job in 5 years. And with that, the new hire's jaw dropped. And he went, well, keep up the good work. And then he ran away. So picture, I kind of think they were both right. I think the only real role the CEO/business leader is to make sure they have a job in 5 years. In fact, if you are doing anything other than making sure they have a job in 5 years, you might be guilty of doing someone else's job for them. And if you feel you're guilty of that, write it on a Post-it note and attach it to your phone. So this way, when you're reaching for that phone, you're not doing someone else's job for them. All right, so that leads me to Canner, which in your first page there, let me pull it up. Canner stands for constant and never-ending reassurance. Constant and never-ending reassurance. See, there's a whole movement now in leadership about be an authentic leader, an authentic leader. I'm like, authentic to what? The scared little boy that's afraid of the future inside me? Or the role, CEO, because I'm actually a CEO of a company. So when my chief assistant walks into my office and says, Mark, how's business? What's she really asking me? Do I have a job next year? So now what I do is I take that as motivation to reinforce my message and my mission. I answer the embedded fear-based question inside that question. When my wife walks into the kitchen, now my wife is an environmental scientist. When she turns to me and says, Mark, how's business? First of all, does she understand business? How about hell no? All right, so the thing is that, now I was in LA, and LA has very different sensibilities than we do in New York, right? And they were like, oh, you sound sexist, you sound misogynistic, you should do this and you should do that, you shouldy, should, and should. They were shoulding all over me. So I said, you know what, now you can't tangle with a group. You guys all know each other, you can gang up on me, right, that type of thing. So I gave them what I call my Heisman Trophy. I said, I'll take that in. So the deal was, now I wasn't really intending to, they don't know my wife. And but there I am sitting the next day on my porch having a cup of coffee with my wife, and she turns to me, she goes, how's business? And I'm thinking, you shouldy, should. So I start to explain how business is. Inside 30 seconds, she stands up, she puts both hands out, and she goes, consider your audience, and then walks away. And I'm thinking, maybe she just needs constant and never-ending reassurance too, all right? What she really wants, she wants to know the green stuff's going to keep coming out of the ATM. I'm not so sure she knows how it gets in there, but she knows how it comes out. Let's just say that, right? So when you're thinking about this, your spouse is included in that. And I know that's not very popular, but you're responsible for the future. I got a nagging suspicion everyone in this room is the breadwinner in their family. They're counting on you for their future. People react to fear one of two ways. They look at the future, get afraid, and then they go find somebody that sounds like he knows what he's talking about the future. That's called an employee. And the other ones look at the future, get scared, and go, I better do something about that. That's called a business leader. So for those of you not currently running a company and want to, I'd caution you that uneasy lies the crown, as they say. In fact, from my surveys, I have the largest survey of privately held CEOs in the country. I beat Ohio State at their own game. I beat the organization known as Vistage at their own game. And one of the points in it was, I asked the question, do you have trouble sleeping at night? 87.7% of my CEOs reported trouble sleeping at night. Now, some of that's prostate problems. Not all of it. I want to move the needle on the not all of it stuff, all right? So, and I want you to be able to produce constant and never-ending reassurance. Constant and never-ending reassurance. If the thing I'm saying is important, I'm going to repeat it so you write it down. There's some science behind this. If you write things down, you're significantly more likely to retain it, and if you write it in cursive, you're even more likely to retain it. Not such a good thing for the next generation who doesn't know how to write in cursive. In fact, you guys know who Tom Coughlin is? Had a sign on his office wall. He had a former head coach of the New York Giants. Had a sign on his office wall that said, if I hear something, I'll forget it. If I see something, I'll know it. If I do something, I'll remember it. That's when I switched from reliant on the PowerPoint to a handout to encourage you to write things down so you don't need to call me offline. Now, if you do want to call me offline, I'll take the phone calls. I don't want you to need to. Cool? All right, so with that, any economist worth his weight will tell you the economy breaks into thirds. 1/3 of the economy, or this little portion over here, is the government. What they mean by that is the government's power to manipulate interest rates, control money supply, and spend. 2/3 is the population. What they mean by that is the population's power to spend. And then the talking head will concentrate all the rest of the time on the government. So it doesn't take much more than a 4th grade math education to know 2/3 is more influential than 1/3. So ask yourself, why do you see the 1/3 in the government is covered at nauseum on CNN, CNBC, Fox News, or wherever you're consuming your news entertainment from? Think about it. It's a transactional business model with the press, isn't it? Right? Are they in business? Yeah. Are they in business to make you money? No, they're in business to make themselves money. What makes them money? Getting you to pay attention to things that aren't important, frankly. Because we are hardwired as human beings to seek existential threats. The number one fear in humanity is walking alone in a jungle at night. Why? Think about it. In our ancestral past, did good things happen when you were alone in a jungle at night? I don't think so. So you are hardwired to fear that. Because there's actually nice ways to die. But it ain't going to happen if you're alone in the jungle at night, right? So we are hardwired to avoid things like that. So what does the press do? Find things that you'll pay attention to and then show those to you. And the real deal it comes down to it is because we're stupid. We are statistically illiterate. It's called innumerate. We actually see global threat statistics and our ancient brain interprets them on a village level. Then we only seek the evidence that proves our incorrect fears correct. Perfect example. You are 5 times more likely to die from a vending machine accident than shark attack. Yet there isn't Vending Machine Week on Discovery Channel for a reason. All right, so let's pay attention to the real stuff here, okay? So I came up with a couple of games here so you could understand people. And frankly, what I'm looking for from these games is for you to understand how predictable the common man really is. So predictable, they never make it to the press. They never make it to a newspaper or even a magazine. They are so normal, they're boring. So what I want to do is prove to you in the next 2 games how boring the common man really is, so that you will bake it into your strategic planning, your marketing planning, and your investment planning, significantly increasing the durability and sustainability of those plans. So if you listen to me long enough, this will have a direct impact on the valuation of your business. And you'll be able to learn, ultimately, how to exit your company for extreme valuation. The start of it is this: 4 questions. Now, don't be like CTOs and CIOs for a minute here, okay? We don't want to overthink this. This is just a game. All right? You guys are too cerebral, so back off the cerebral stuff and just answer what you think. Circle which one of those age groups do you think does those questions the most. And then I'm going to test you on it. Time's up. Okay, so how many people here think 30-year-olds spend the most money in America today? Okay, if you look around the room, that's the minority, I would say. How many people think 50-year-olds spend the most money in America today? That's definitely the majority. 60-year-olds spend the most money in America today. We got 2, 3, 2.5, 4? Okay, 4. All right, so next one. How many people here think 30-year-olds produce the most for their business or corporation? Yeah, I kind of anticipated that, especially in your field. That looked almost half. How many people think 50-year-olds produce the most for their business or corporation? Yeah, I'd say that's almost half too. 60-year-olds produce the most for their business or corporation. All right, Stan, I'm definitely noticing some ageism here. Like, I'm 60. Yeah, look, and you're retiring. So the deal is like, okay. So I'm just thinking like maybe an HR speaker on ageism. All right, this next one's going to prove it here, okay? How many people think 30-year-olds earn the most? Yeah, I kind of figured that. All right, the only reason why I still bring up that question is I've actually presented 4 times in Palo Alto. And I would have thought like 2 hands would have went in the air, like standing ovation. All 4 times they said none also. So you guys didn't shock me. 50-year-olds earn the most. All right, look at that. That's almost unanimous. 60-year-olds earn the most. Well, we got a couple there. That's pretty good. Okay, so invest the most. No one's ever said 30-year-olds. I won't even ask it. 50-year-olds invest the most. That's a pretty good number there. That looks majority. 60-year-olds invest the most. Okay, so the long story of this, or short story of it is, 50-year-olds is the answer to all 4 questions. So the first takeaway here is you can tell the health of any economy in the world based on how many people are in their 50-year-old age group, specifically 49 to 55 years old, and you can download that information for free from the CIA. Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency. If you go to the CIA's World Book of Facts, for those of you still like working on your computers, if you Google CIA World Book of Facts, hit images, 193 countries will pop up, and I can teach you how to actually learn, study those charts. Fast, effective, cheap, right? So how many people here have an international footprint or are looking to have one? All right, so it's some. You turn to those age pyramids, they fall into three basic shapes. One is an arrowhead. So the arrowhead's no good. The economies are actually going to be struggling going forward because there's too many old people in the economy. How they act towards legal immigration will affect their economy vastly in the next few decades, and you can't count on that. What you're looking for are ones that look like a Dairy Queen ad or a minaret, kind of fat in the center, where the numbers of people in this age group are actually really thick and fat, and there's more of them coming along. Brazil would be a great example of that. It's also a great example of a country you shouldn't go after because they are anti-trade. They think they're the next China. Therefore, they're never going to live up to what their potential is. If I'm looking to expand into South America, I'd be looking at the environs around Brazil because Brazil is too difficult and pain in the tush to do business with. Oh, by the way, China is not the next China. So China has a lot of problems going forward because of the one-child rule. You can't have one person supporting two parents, supporting four parents in a tax structure. Tax structure implodes. You're going to see them devalue their currency probably a half a dozen times in the next decade to two. Decade and a half, let's call it. So, and you can't trust statistics coming out of China. The finance minister's name is Wee Lai. All right, so moving on. So, okay, so this next game is, I call it the age game or the life event timeline. Now, I got to give you a caveat here because in part of my world, speaking so regularly, there's one organization that scores me electronically, kind of like a Yelp, and then they send me the comments. I kind of wish they wouldn't, especially after this last one. About a year ago, someone wrote in the comments, I don't know why Mark Parrott talks about the baby boom generation anymore. They're no longer relevant. Now, that's a special kind of stupid. Well, you can't claim it's ignorance because I taught them why they're relevant. And it's not like I have one affinity for one generation over the other. Oh, baby boomers are better than millennials. Generation Xer, we got this? I'm a Generation Xer, and so I'm part of the forgotten generation. I was so forgotten, I'm the seventh of seven. So my parents used to pay me $1 to babysit myself. Now they'd be arrested for it. Meanwhile, I was psyched. I was like 9 years old, and I get the television to myself, you know? So watching Starsky and Hutch and what have you. All right, so we're going to concentrate mainly on baby boomers because they're old enough to have hit every rung on the ladder I'm about to show you. That's why I talk about baby boomers. Cool? You cannot know what Generation I or even millennials will do in their retirement years because they're not old enough to know for sure. Cool? All right, so how old were baby boomers when they moved out of their parents' home? Okay, so it's actually 22. Who said 22? Okay, cool. So 22. It's not 18, although that's the most common answer I get. Makes sense because the majority didn't attend college, let alone finish college, right? But if you don't have a college degree and you enter the workforce, most of the time you have to do some type of apprenticeship work to earn the economic event of moving out. So the bell curve peaks at 22. Also in this chart, a couple of statistical issues here. I know we're in California, but not everybody here is from California, correct? All right, so what happens is if you're in New York and San Francisco, all of these numbers are skewed northwards. And the reason why is because those real estate markets are so prohibitively expensive, kids can't move out that early. Like I myself was 25 when I moved out, and that was kind of young for the neighborhood. So like New York, San Francisco, and its ilk skew all national statistics. Older, rural Indiana would pull them younger. All right, so how old were baby boomers when they got married? 25. I'm sparing you the decimal points for speed here too. How old are they when they had their first child? 27. Now here's the thing. I'd be writing these down, This is proprietary information. You can't get this from the CIA, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or the Census. They don't know this stuff. All right, some of it they know, but not all of it. All right, so now I'm going to back up and I'm going to talk a little bit about millennials. They are doing things differently, and it is something to keep an eye on. 40% of first-time live births last year were to non-wed mothers. Now, that's not teenage mothers. That's women in their late 20s are choosing to have a child prior to marriage. Now, I don't know what the long-term ramifications are of that. In fact, when you take too small a data census and you draw too long a conclusion, anyone know what that's called? It's called flatline projecting, and stupid. Me no likey flatline projecting. Who does love flatline projecting is every talking head you've ever seen on television. And the reason why is because they're hurting for content, believe it or not. Why is Trump covered? Any tweet tweets out, it's covered ad nauseum, right? It's because we're living in the lowest news time period in the history of the world. Great book on the subject called Factfulness by Hans Rosling. If you're not, anyone here not a reader, like give me some honest answers here. Only a couple? Okay, so Hans Rosling shot a video with the BBC before he died, and it's the coolest video I've ever seen. If you hit YouTube, hit the joy of stats, in 4 minutes, Hans Rosling shows you how the livelihoods of all the inhabitants of every country in the world has improved in the last 200 years, and they do it in augmented reality. It's the coolest video I've ever seen. And he's got this goofy Swedish accent, so it's kind of half funny. It's like the Swedish chef from The Muppet Show teaching you about the world. He's got a really salient argument, though. He argues that our worldview is incorrect. It's basically freeze-dried the day we graduate high school. And that's probably the dirty secret of that is it's really probably the day our teachers graduated high school. So if you're looking for international investing, you probably have an incorrect worldview that needs a little rejiggering. All right, so the second odd thing that millennials are doing is last year was the first year the generation did not replace itself. The fertility rate dropped below the minimum 2.1. It dropped to 1.97. Again, 1 year is not a trend. Don't draw long-term conclusions. Just keep it on your radar screen as an interesting statistic. And will it affect the things we're about to talk about in the next generation? Yes. So, but for now, let's get back to baby boomers. How old were baby boomers when they purchased their first home? 31. How old were they when they fully furnished that first home? Dude, you don't have to laugh. It doesn't have to be Thomasville. It could be like IKEA, Goodwill, or something. How old? 36. So how old are they when they bought a trade-up property, if they ever did? 42. How old are they when they fully furnished that trade-up house, assuming they bought one? 46. How old are they when they bought a vacation property, if they ever do? 52. Now, it turns out this is a starter vacation property. This is the RV market, like cottage by a lake kind of a thing. The dream vacation property market peaks at 67. And how old are they when they purchase a retirement property? It's actually 70. Why'd you say 73? Thank you for your honesty. The reason why I'm asking that is because I'm not sure that this statistic is accurate. They're doing a massive study on it right now, but the government takes their sweet time in these type of things. I believe this is actually a blended statistic. I think it's 55 and over housing and assisted living facility. But frankly, I don't know and I don't care. And the reason why is I have no clients that are in that space. The moral of that statement is, if your clients are in that space, you should know and you should care. The moral of that story is, you need to know the magic age of the end user of your product or service. That is such an important statement, I'm going to repeat myself until you write it down. You need to know the magic age of the end user of your service. You need to know the magic age of the end user of your service. Think about it. How many people here have ever done strategic planning? Put your hands down. You haven't. Not unless you've taken the time to actually analyze whether your key relationships check is going to continue to cash in the next decade. Have you done that? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, so the situation is me no likey wishful thinking. I'd write that one down. All right, so the deal is that what happens is if you're strategic planning and you're doing it based on short-term results like last couple of years and then extrapolating that out forward, that's the overwhelming majority of all strategic plans. It's a waste of time. It's wishful thinking, and that can be dangerous. Think about it. The man who's full of beans and knows it is not as dangerous as the man who's full of beans and doesn't know it. See what I'm saying? And don't tell me that stuff like, oh, I'm publicly traded. We have a 100-year strategic plan. Only something that dumb can come out of Japan. It's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Right? Think about it. In your industry especially, maybe you guys know this better than the other industries I consult with. Think about it. Do you know the landscape of your industry 10 years from now? Let alone 5 years from now? Oh, we got a 100-year plan? What a waste of time that is. So, and the overwhelming majority of all publicly traded companies cannot afford to pay attention to their strategic plans. Why not? Because they have heroin addicts known as stockholders, right? And who are the most addicted to heroin addicts? The boards of directors. So picture this. If you're privately held, you have something a publicly traded company cannot have, and that's patience. Because you can only hold the moral high ground for however long your board will allow you to. And you know what the first quarterly board meeting is for a publicly traded CEO? It's a job interview. Guess what the second one is? A job interview. Guess what the third one is? Job interview. So what I want is to pad your resume. I want you prepared that you can say the right things and do the right things, but also for the long term, because you have people counting on you, don't you? And if you're privately held, I want to turn you into a contrarian. When the rest of the world is fat, dumb, and happy, like right now, this is the #1 complaint I get. Mark, it's so hard to hire well. Yeah, no, duh. Stock market's gone up 10 plus years in a row. So what do you think all those institutions are? They're fat, dumb, and happy. They're throwing stupid money at unqualified people. Guess what happens when the market pulls back? Do they keep all those people? Do they get more aggressive? No, they get more conservative and kick those people overboard. It's called ballast. I want you positioning yourself right now to be able to gobble up all that talent, all those acquisitions, all that real estate you're looking for right now. Be patient, because the market is not going to stay as strong as it is right now. It's part of the bad news I have to tell you. It's kind of like you're living on the West Coast and you haven't had an earthquake in 20 years. Maybe it's time to buy the insurance. What is insurance? Chilling. Chill. Is this a legal weed state? Is yours a legal weed state? All right, you want to know how you know your state went legal weed? It's based on the Subarus. So when the Subarus show up in town and they're covered in bumper stickers that are like holding the thing together like a Band-Aid, legal weed. So if you're thinking like if your state's about to go legal weed, invest in used Subarus and bumper stickers. You make a killing. You're welcome. All right, so back to this. I'm going to take you from the macro. I'm going to take you to the micro. Let's pretend everybody in this room is a residential contractor. How important would it be for you to know how many people in your neck of the woods is between 31 and 46 years old? It's a game changer, isn't it? You know, it's readily available and free, fast, effective, cheap. You go to census.gov. It's a program on there called My Congressional District. You put in any zip code in the United States, it spits back all sorts of cool, useful demographic information. Now, the cynic in me would say that's so congressmen can gerrymander. But the deal is, it doesn't mean it's not useful to everybody in this room, especially if you're going to coach your better relationships to stay relevant for the next 10 years. Now picture, virtually everybody in this room is a B2B, correct? Business to business? Yes? Okay, so I'm in Cleveland, and I got this rule. After doing 300 of these, I got this rule now. If I say something clever, you're welcome to steal it. If you say something clever, I am going to steal it. So there's a guy sitting in your chair. Stands up and he goes, hold on a second, Mark. So what you're really saying is if I'm B2B, I got to know my B's, C's. I said, I'm totally stealing that. So if you don't know your B's, C's, have you ever done strategic planning? Now let me ask you a bigger, tougher question. Do sales forces lack vision? How about hell to the yeah? All right, they're relationship oriented, right? They make the mistake thinking, oh, this guy's check cashed, so they're deserving of a relationship with our company. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's the first layer of analysis. Does their check cash? The second one is, what's the prognosis of the future? Is that check going to continue to cash? And if it is, do they deserve more love from you guys? Yeah. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So back to this. So remember, we now know how to actually know how many people are between 31 and 46 in our neck of the woods. But which is more important, knowing how many or the trend? I would argue it's the trend. So if the number is increasing for the next 15 years and you're a residential contractor, what should you be doing? Doubling down. Invest in capital infrastructure, hire, acquire, advertise, grow at all costs, right? What if the number is decreasing for the next 15 years? What should you do? Well said. Very intellectual, though, I got to tell you. So picture, I'm in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and there's an architect in the room. Gave me the best answer I've ever gotten, and I've presented this to over 9,000 companies in the last 6 years. Best answer ever from Brookfield, Wisconsin. Anyone from Brookfield? Yeah, we know it's like the hotbed of intellectual capital in the world, right? So it's like right up there with Stanford and Harvard, right? So this guy's an architect. Now, anyone here deal with an architect? Anyone? Would you ever let him run your company? Universal answer. So I was actually guest lecturing at the University of Cincinnati, and I asked that question to the architecture department. I said, would you ever let an architect run your company? They all said, hell no. So they don't teach business in architecture school, right? So I go, well, if the number's decreasing, so if the number of people 31 to 46 is decreasing for the next 15 years, what should you do? Guy goes, sell my company to somebody who doesn't know that. Dang, that's a good answer, right? Then this guy answers 5 other questions, brilliant. Best answers I've ever had. So after the 4th one, I'm getting suspicious. This guy's an architect? Get out of here, right? So I put the cap on the marker because this was a workshop I was working with. And after the 5th one, I threw the marker on the ground. I go, dude, come on, tell me the truth. You're not an architect. I go, I bet you're the worst architect in your building. Big smile on his face. He goes, I am. That's why I can run it. You know, there is a lesson in that too, by the way, especially for you not running companies right now. There's a tendency, especially with intelligence officers, is to overthink things. Almost like spend too much time in perfection, trying to get perfect at the chosen field of study. And what you really need in order to run a company is a core competency in it and the ability to look over the horizon. We spend too little time looking over the horizon. The good news is your competitors spend no time looking over the horizon. So if we spend that, boy, we can eat everybody else's lunch. So write this down for those of you suspecting that you're guilty of what I'm about to say. Perfection is for suckers. Now, if you think you're guilty of it, write it down on a Post-it note and attach it to your phone. Soon you won't have a phone. You're just going to be covered in Post-it notes, right? So write it to your phone. If you got a direct report suffering from it, give them the parole to the prison sentence that is their mind. Why would you want them wasting time chasing something that's impossible? Get them to reinvest that energy into being excellent. And then you won't lose them later on to some sickness or take this job and shove it syndrome, right? So the situation here is I want to take you from this and walk you through the spending patterns of the average American. Now I'm going to show it for you, and then I'll show it to you in a different chart. What ends up happening is we tend to increase in spending exponentially as we move out. We peak at 49.5, plateau out to 55, and then decrease every year the rest of our lives. It looks like this. So do you guys know what the difference between a hurricane and a hurricane is? Did you lose in my accent? All right, so when you're 25 years old, a hurricane is a drink in New Orleans. When you're 75 years old, it's a cane you buy on late night television that's got a bunch of tubes and a bungee cord going through it. You let go of it, it snaps into a cane with a knuckle joint in the bottom and 3 prongs so you can put it on any land terrain, you won't fall over. Hurricane, spending patterns change. Think cocaine and Rogaine. Spending patterns change. And what we're talking about here is the difference between my father and me. So I'm a 52-year-old New York suburbanite with 4 boys under 20. My dad's a 91-year-old empty nester living in Juno Beach, Florida, in an assisted living facility. Who spends more money, me or him? Damn straight, dude. In fact, proof positive, we flew my parents up last year, right around this time. We flew them up to celebrate their 90th birthday party. They're both still alive. And we brought in all the cousins from far away. And remember, I'm, you know, 7th of 7. So there's lots of people coming in. And my parents showed up in the same clothes they moved to Florida in 25 years ago. And they weren't in style 25 years ago. Like, you know that vintage clothing market? My dad's got that cornered. He's good for like the next 20 years, right? He's good. So in fact, 5 years ago, we're at an Irish wake, right? So I'm picking on you, bro, because you're looking at me funny. You're my dad, all right? My dad's wandering around this wake because he just happened to be in town, wanted to go, and he's kissing babies, shaking hands, playing mayor and stuff like that. You're my sister. My sister leans into me. She goes, we got to do something about Dad. And I look over at him. I go, what are you talking about? What do we got to do about Dad? She goes, look at him. He's a mess. I look over. Sure enough, he's a mess. And I said, I'm not going to do anything about him. One day I'll look exactly like him. And I don't know about you guys. And I know this doesn't go over with the ladies so good, but guys, aren't you kind of looking forward to it? Like, I want to wear my pajamas in the daytime, like, so bad. And I want to have ear hair like a Rastafarian. I cannot wait to no longer care. And I'm betting I'm not the only dude in this room. Any brothers? Any brothers? Yeah, you unite. The rest of you is sellouts, right? All right, so, all right, so what do we do with this information? So what ends up happening is that if we look at it from, well, let me ask you this. Why is 49 and a half years old the peak spending age of the average American? No, like picture. What ends up happening is you had your first kid, how old? 27. How old is a kid when they move out? 22. What's 22 plus 27? Does that work for you? You now know something the federal government doesn't know. They know that 49 and a half is the peak spending age. They know that 55 is the plateau, but they don't know why. See, what happens is they're phenomenal gatherers of data and disseminators of data. That's where the science lies. They do no interpretation with that information whatsoever. Like, there's a difference between myself and the CIA. Well, there's a bunch of differences. One is, I'll return your phone call. And like, you end up on like some watch list if you call them too much. So the deal is, but I'll actually tell you what the interpretations are, my conclusions, but I tell you the difference between the facts and my conclusions so you can draw your own, right? Did that conclusion kind of bounce off your belly barometer? Kind of cool? All right, so the first kid moves out. Why is 55 the plateau then? Say again? The last kid moves out, correct. Nuclear family, 2 kids, right? And then what happens when the second kid moves out? Spending patterns change dramatically, right? Houses get smaller, cars get smaller, spending on restaurants goes up, walkers, medication goes up, right? So remember, cocaine, Rogaine. So what happens here is that if we track, we simply sit back and go, okay, let's say that my key demographic is selling to 55-year-olds. I got bad news for you. There's less 55-year-olds every minute of every day for the next 13 straight years. There are more 35-year-olds every minute of every day for the next 23 straight years. So if your key customers crack the code on millennials, am I worried about you? Not really. So by extension, their check will continue to cash no matter what happens with the stock market. Oh, and by the way, if you think your company is not directly connected to the stock market, you are high. I'd write that one down. That's a good one. So why would I say such a thing? All the big players in every space are publicly traded, right? All the banks publicly traded. So do you think that you're immune when the market collapses? You're going to be okay? No. Everyone in this room is going to be affected by it. It's how affected by it that I'm concerned about. I want at the end of this, when I walk out of here, whoever one of you is going to be shaking my hand, I want you shaking your head going, don't worry, Mark, I got this. I got this. And if you don't got this, call me until you got this. So I want to make sure that you're okay. Never want to have those conversations about suicide ever again. That stunk. And in New York, I'd use a different S word. So the situation here is, what do we do with this information? How do we stay relevant? Well, one of the ways is we can identify business models that actually benefit from this dynamic. Like, it's the upside of aging, right? Because they're positioned for it. Second thing we can do is look at industries that are actually classically recession resistant. In fact, this is what I want to do. I want to break you guys up into groups. Every one of your tables, you guys in the back group there, well, that's a big group back there, but you guys in the back, work on it together. Pick one person to scribe, flip the page over to page 6. There's a relatively blank sheet where they have the ability for you to write down and answer these questions. What are business models that benefit from the aging of the population? And what are businesses that are classically recession-proof, or recession-resistant is really a better word? So who's likely to thrive during this time period? Think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the needs of humanity. Remember, there's a human being at the end of the transaction. What are they going to be spending money on regardless of the market cycle, right? So, or you're driving through a rough section of town. Rough sections of town are in permanent recession. So if it thrives in a rough section of town, it's not market sensitive. So list everything, every business model you can think of that's classically recession resistant and or benefits from the aging of the population. Do that now. Once we're done with this, we're going to come back and fill in each other's blind spots. Cool? Let's do it. All right, so I'm just going to come around, point to each table. You're going to give me one example, and if it's not on your list, put it on your list, right? You're going to give me one example that you haven't heard so far. So you guys get to go first. What do you got?
Housing?
Housing, absolutely. Anything with the word rental in it, right? Anything rental. Because if you lose your home, you still need shelter, correct? Good job. What else you got? Healthcare. Healthcare. Very large category. The hottest categories in M&A right now is healthcare and software. The only way to get a higher valuation in mergers and acquisitions these days is to be in software for healthcare. Right? Absolute juggernaut because of the demographic story. What do you got back there? Liquor. Oh, my favorite category. You were thinking it. Come on. All right, I'm Irish Catholic, so I like whiskey just a little too much. All right, so what the situation is that I'd put that under a much larger heading known as sin. All right, sin does great in recessions because if I'm going to fall into my addictions because my life stinks, right? But what does equally well as sin but is the opposite of sin? Religion. Write that one down. So I'm in Florida and a guy goes, well, how do you make money on religion? And there's some guy sitting over in your chair goes, that's my business model. I go, it is? Okay, so what's your business model? He goes, I'm a liquidator. So as soon as the recession hits, I buy up all the chairs from the hotels because they're not going to be putting on as many events, and I sell them to strip mall churches that spring up because people are bummed out. And then when the market like V's and recovers, those go belly up. He buys back the chairs for cents on the dollar and sells them back to the hotels. Like, that is like sneaky smart, man. And you guys remember the Simpsons movie, right? They're lowering that dome down on Springfield because it's too polluted and they're going to nuke it. And it looks like the end of the world, and then everybody runs out of the church, runs into Moe's Tavern, and everybody in Moe's Tavern runs out and runs into the church. Tell me that doesn't sum up humanity, right? So what else you got? Utilities, absolutely. What do you got? Oh, death industry. That's my favorite category of them all. Put it in all capital letters. More people are going to die in the next 40 years than have ever died in American history. Like, you're laughing, I'm not. I'm laughing all the way to the bank with that one. So private equity is sometimes in my audiences to say, Mark, if you're going to do a roll-up today, what would it be? I'm like, headstones. Like, I know they don't have them in California, but they have them everywhere else. And it's always like Tony Bag of Donuts, headstones, and D'Agostino's and something else. So just like a classic Wayne Huizenga roll-up. You walk in, you say, hey, I'm gonna take over one of your companies, put the other two out of business, just like Blockbuster did to all the mom and pop VHS stores, remember? They went from renting for $5 to $1, put them out of business, because you can control the economies of scale on the back end. You still keep a D'Agostino's or whatever you want to call it, because no one wants to get buried by Starbucks or McDonald's or anything. But I'm telling you, you could screw that business up for 40 years and make a fortune anyway. So just so you understand, you guys understand like startups and stuff, right? Right? You've read the Lean Startup. You know, there's 5 iterations to a business model. You get what I'm talking about? No? That's a good book for you guys, especially, because if you're going to do a startup or anything like that, you have to prove to venture capital that you can produce a 20x multiple in 10 years. And a 20x multiple, it translates to a 14.4% compounded rate of return, right, which is actually pretty doable. The death industry has a 60x multiplier. And any industry the baby boomers were just about to touch is willfully unprepared for the demands. So you actually get demands-based inflation, too. Absolute juggernaut. What do you got? What else? Entertainment, absolutely. People want escapism. There's actually a whole theory in both film studies and econ where they can actually judge the health of the economy based on how fanciful the movies are that win the Oscars. Kind of interesting. What else you got? Food. Anything agricultural related. You need a farmer 3 times a day. What else you got? Pharma, absolutely. Because, you know, I used to have, when I used to do this back for the general public, a psychiatrist showed up in my audience, and she was like, is there anything I have to worry about? I'm like, nope. People be lining up for what you sell. So what else you got? Waste management, absolutely. The flip side of that is water. What else you got, guys? Tapped out? Okay, no problem. Then hang in there and start writing. What else you got?
Mobility.
Mobility, absolutely. Transportation. There's an issue now. I don't want to offend anybody in the room. Remember 2 funny bones? All right, the idea is that software engineers don't speak human. That's why it takes 4 or 5 iterations of any idea in order to crack the code on normal people actually doing something. Sound right? So what we have to remember is there is a human being at the end of all transactions spending money to make something happen. They'll need to be transported or better mobility. I'm presenting to the auto industry in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They said, what should we be doing? I'm like, well, first thing I'd be doing is thinking about how can I get old people in and out of a car quicker? Because it takes me like 45 minutes with my parents getting them in and out of a car. It's like a rigmarole. Can you guys relate? So all I said was, okay, what if you took the 4 doors, turned them into gull wings, welded the doors together, turned them into gull wings, and had the seats kind of come out, pick them up, and then put them back in the... And then I saw it on Cheddar, like a week later. I'm like, you know, good minds think alike, I guess. All right, so what else we got? Back.
We got like
Walmart, dollar stores, discount anything. What else you got back there? Anything?
Utilities.
We already said that. What else? Payday loan. Pred loans, absolutely. What else you got? Insurance, absolutely. What else you got back there? Yeah, you can say legal anything except for divorce. Anything with the word elder in it or senior in it. Estate, anything like that. Better call Saul. Absolutely. Because more people sue in those type of environments. What do you got back there? Back. Absolutely. Well, no, assisted living, absolutely. What else? There's a big one you're still missing. What else? Pawn shops, love that. What else? Say again? Tapped, okay. What else? Or just say it louder. Pet, absolutely. This one was a curveball to me. We used to be able to predict where you were going to sell the most amount of Lay's potato chips, what street corner, and that correlated perfectly to dog food. The concept was when a young man turns 14 years old, it's the highest caloric intake of his lifetime and the most amount of Lay's potato chips. Now, this is pre-computers and all that stuff. So we extrapolated into it. That also is the year that the son would win the argument with the father. I swear, Dad, I'll take care of the dog. They didn't, but the dad couldn't argue anymore, ends up with this dopey golden retriever, has to feed it, right? So what I'm figuring is with empty nester spending syndrome, what person's going to want a dog like that? Boy, was I wrong. In New York, you know what they do? They have these powder puff little poodle things, and then they put them in baby carriages and walk them around town. And then the thing doesn't get enough exercise, so they get it a gym membership and a car seat. You're laughing. I'd be laughing all the way to the bank. Highest ROI of any business model. Won't be as good as the death industry, but it has a 187% growth rate in the last 15 years. That's the highest ROI of any business model. The only one that's going to be higher is the death industry. Now, think about it this way. I had a guy in my audience. He goes, well, you know, I make specialized food for pets. I'm like, yeah, do you own a pet cemetery? He went, no, stood up with his phone and walked out of the room like this. Think pet crematorium, any of that type of stuff. Awesome ideas. What else we got?
Self-storage units.
Self-storage units, absolutely. What else? Say again? Absolutely. I'm glad you brought this up. This is one of the big ones. The government. All right, so now permission to use colorful language to quote somebody, yes? It's okay? Okay, cool. So the deal is I'll try to temper myself as much as possible. But here's the situation. I'm in that same group in Brookfield, Wisconsin. There was a banker in the room. And he goes, you know what, Mark? I'm not going to bitch anymore about what they do with my tax dollars. I know they're going to do stupid stuff with it. What I'm going to do is it's my job to anticipate the stupid moves the current regime is going to do. Now, this was a while ago, so don't think this is anything political. All the regimes do something stupid with the money Because as soon as the market collapses, which we're not far away, they suddenly have a blank check to do whatever the hell they want to do. And they have the ability to print funny money. So what it is, you got to anticipate what's the loaded agenda that regime is going to implement under the guise of creating jobs and then cram it down the throat of the voter. The voter's just looking for stimulus, right? Is it actually the stimulus that makes the market recover? No. It takes too long in Congress for it to get congressional approval and to implement it. The market's actually already recovered. You also cannot know if any stimulus plan is the cause of the stimulation, because when you affect the entirety of the whole, you contaminate with any other type of variable. You can never know if the economists are actually correct or not. It's like the greatest science to go into, because you can't be held accountable for anything. You know what Truman used to say? I only want to deal with a one-handed economist. So this way the guy can't say, but then on the other hand. So the situation is this guy goes, you know, Mark, I'm not going to bitch anymore about what they do with my tax revenue. I'm actually going to anticipate the moves and then charge my bankers with going back and earning it back for me. Mic drop. Is the dude playing a victim to the future? No. He's anticipating. He's taking responsibility for it. Think about it this way. If you're foolish enough to listen to some doping talking head convince you there are villains in your life and get emotional about it, what message do you think you're sending to your constituency, your employees, that you're the leader they should follow? You're going to get emotional about something outside your control? That's a fool's move. So that talking head can make $22 million a year? No, thank you. Anyone in this room is not a victim. And a little side note of that, anyone comes to me and goes, Mark, we got a problem. The first thing I'm thinking of is, what's this we stuff? And in New York, I say something else. So the deal is but I say that in my head. So what I do is I turn to them and say, okay, what's the problem? And then I listen, like I'm actually really listening. And then I go, wow, it sounds like a tough challenge. What can be done about it? And then I shut the hell up. You let silence do the heavy lifting. What you're listening for is a good answer. That's either a coachable event or they do it often enough and it's vapid, make them available. So what you're doing is coaching them to get out of problem mentality. We don't have problems in the United States. We have challenges. And that's not just semantics. That's contextual shift in the mind of people. You're born in Somalia, you got a problem. You got cancer, all right, I'll cut you a little slack. The deal is a little. The deal is, though, is we live in a world of challenges, and that's not just semantics. It gets them into solution mode instantaneously. You do that 5 times to a pain in the tush direct report without letting them know that they're a pain in the tush, you adult to adult, and they will stop coming into your office. Cool? All right, so what else we got? You're missing the biggest one there. Hold on, communication's on there. Yes, what'd you say? Recruiting, okay, that's on there too. Staffing. Technology, okay, that's a little dangerous for me to say. Technology is a little like this. Hardware is a little like this, because you have a disruptive technology element that makes it a little more treacherous. Yes, okay, so the situation here is, the last one on there is maintenance. You need maintenance contracts in your business model. If that matters in a deal for you, you have to have them. Stop fighting it and go get them. It's the biggest thing in M&A. But the most important part here is, what do we do with this information? Think about it. You're B2B. So I'm going to skip B2C in this presentation because we don't have enough here. I coached Martin Guitars on how to stay relevant. I did it for Taylor Guitars too. Situation is they were B2C. So I got them to pivot to offer different things to the marketplace so they could move off their chief demographic, which was 48-year-old white American males, because we were decreasing in them for 14 years. So they needed a Chevette strategy. Write that down, Chevette strategy. A cheaper alternative. How a service company does it is when you're responding to an RFP or some type of demand from a customer, break down all the services a la carte. So this way, when the market collapses, turn to you looking for a discount, you can say, okay, which lines should we line item out of this thing? Be prepared for that because it's about to happen again. It may have already started. Now, if I'm wrong, how wrong am I going to be? 12 months? So what I would be doing is, if I'm wrong, and you'll know just in the next few days, if things really start to recover here, start getting to cash because we're about to get our butts whooped. The market's going to drop around 36%. Now, why? Is that I'm swinging a dead cat over my head at the full moon and I know something you don't know? No, it's simple math. That's what happens. The market retrenches 50% of whatever the advance was. So you can get that acquisition you want super cheap. That's the first thing. So investment strategies, chill. Smoke some legal weed, pause button. All right? Relationship audit. This is something everybody in this room has to teach their sales force. The current relationships you have. What's the prognosis on the likelihood of their check continuing to cash in the next decade? And what you're listening for are legal weasel words. Kinda, sorta, maybe, believe, think, feel. Feel's a big one for this next generation. I feel like it's this and I feel like it's that. Like that's evidence. No, 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 no. So what you want to do is approach that, kill that thinking with the most important question I have to teach you here today. But do it the way I'm doing it. No judgment, no eyebrow raise, no like, I know something you don't know, none of that stuff, right? Just adult to adult. So I'm picking on you, Stan, because I know your name. All right, so here's the thing. It's what evidence do you have to support that claim? What evidence do you have to support that claim? What evidence do you have to support that claim? Who here has read The Speed of Trust? All right, keep your hands in the air. Have you had your sales force read it? Okay, so I'm pointing at you because you raised your hand and didn't give it. The rest of you need to read that book. Top 5 book all time. I'm a voracious reader. I was on 20 different planes in the month of October. That's how much I fly. And I've got kind of a cursed blessing. I don't sleep on flights, so I read voraciously. Top 5 book. And the real truth of it is, great things came out of Google, except for one bad one. Sales don't exist anymore. Sales used to be an exchange of knowledge. Now it's an exchange of trust. So where might we find a laundry list of people that your sales forces can go chase after whose check's going to continue cash for the next decade? Where might we find a laundry list like that? You just did it, sitting right in front of you, right? You wrote that down, correct? So what you need to do is teach this to your sales force. I cannot do that for you, although we did shoot videos for that subject. I can help you. We wrote the book for them, not you. In fact, can I tell you a funny story about the book? My oldest sister calls me up. Now, she's a genius IQ. She has a JD. She's got CFP. She's got elemental PJ after her name. She calls me up and she goes, Mark, I hear you're writing a book. I said, yeah, Jerry. She goes, I don't think you should write this book. I said, why not? And she goes, well, you're not much of a writer. I'm like, awesome. You should do pep talks because this is like great, right? I'm 9 chapters deep into this book. Thanks a lot, right? So I said, Jerry, what's the last time you bought a business book? And she goes, oh, it's decades. I said, well, let's just say I'm not competing against Tolstoy, right? What are most business books? Like they draw the conclusion in the first paragraph, right? And then they give you only the evidence that proves themselves correct. That's worse than a waste of time. You should demand your money back and give them a terrible review on Amazon. So my book isn't like that. We know people don't buy books. And those that do, don't read them. And those that do read them, don't finish them. We know this. And this has been the way since 1992, believe it or not. It's getting progressively worse. So we call the book Everything You Need in a One-Flight Read. It's a reference manual for all of what you just heard here. So that's what your sales force needs to read, along with The Speed of Trust. In fact, it's the thing when I look on Amazon about when people buy my book, the #1 book they buy with my book is The Speed of Trust. You combine those two, now you've pointed the sales force in the right direction. Now do I have to worry about you guys anymore? No. That's what I want. Now bear in mind, that was a lot of information in a very short period of time, and I got one bad news for you left. What's the secret ingredient? Knowledge is not power. Knowledge in action is power. And knowledge in accountable action is real power. So the secret ingredient here is not me. It's not even what I just taught you. It's not my book. It's none of that. It's you. It's way too easy to hear something, go, wow. And then, especially in this day and age with like Yelp going, me like this, me not like this, right? And then confuse that as if it's actually an accomplishment. It's not. The only one who can benefit from you liking this or not liking it is me. And I'm not here for that. I'm here for you. What I want to do is make sure that your plans are durable and sustainable. So what I want you to do is think about what we just talked about here and write something down. If you write it down, you're more likely to realize it. And then I've got an offer for you. So take a minute. What'd you hear? What are you going to do with this information? I just found this out 2 weeks ago, and you got to forgive me. I'm just old enough to not really understand technology. It was the last graduating class from my high school that didn't have to type. So I can't spell, I can't type, I don't even have any idea what a semicolon is. And frankly, if you do, you annoy me. So the situation is, in fact, I have 4 waves of editors. Every time they said to me, Mark, you can't say it that way, I'd type back, whom cares? And I'm telling you, I was really proud of that joke. Not a one of those dudes laughed at it, you know? So they're like, that's my job. Okay, dude, chill. It's just a joke. Remember Two Funny Bones? All right, so here's my offer. I need people to review the book. I didn't know this. That matters on Amazon for some reason. So here's my offer to you. If you're willing to buy the book on Amazon and give it a review, I can't give you the copy of the book because it has to be a verified purchase. If you're willing to do that, I will give you an hour free of my time. So just make me aware that that's what you did. You have my contact on the back of the thing. If you want to hand me a business card, that's fine on the way out. But if you're willing to review the book, I'm willing to coach you on whatever you need. This is unfortunately, we don't have enough time to give you everything I got here in such a short period of time. But I got to tell you this. You guys did something for me here today. This is higher purpose work for me. I'm here to help the few protect the many. And here's the thing. You guys gave me 2 things that are in ridiculous short supply and enabling me to do that. You gave me your time and you gave me your attention. I'm telling you, this is an honor. Thank you so much for having me here today.